So once you go ahead and select the text tool, which is T in case you want to know the shortcut, you'll see the properties of this tool underneath the Properties tab. And one of the things that you can choose to do is change the font. Typically it comes up Times, but you can change it to something else if you would like. And you can click in the stage and just start typing. Or if you want, you can actually click and hold down, say you want your text to be a specific width and not go beyond that, and you can start typing this way. So here's the main difference then. If I click and I paste in a large quantity of text, you'll notice that it goes pretty much off the screen. I'm going to undo that, and then I'm going to click and hold down and set it to a specific width. Now, if I paste in a whole bunch of text, it constrains it to that width. However, you can still make the text larger if you like. We do that over here under Character. We can click and hold down, there's a little slider, and make it a lot larger or smaller. We can also change some other options, such as having it be centered or align right. We can also justify it, meaning it will kind of put spaces in things and make it so that there's a straight line of text on the left and the right. Typically, you'll probably just go ahead and use Align Left. So let's go back here for just a second. We can see that we have the size, which we can actually click on and then type in. Say I want 16. We can change the color to some other color in the typical way that we're used to doing color. We can change the letter spacing. So if I move my mouse near this or I move it near the size area, you'll notice that it changes to a pointer with little two arrows going in opposite directions. Well, that's my indication that I can click and hold down, and then I can make the size or the letter spacing in this case different, and I don't have to type it in. So you'll see that it's adding spaces between the letters. Typically, you'll probably have it at 0, but feel free to play around with that. Under the anti-alias, the typical default is the anti-alias for readability. You'll see that when I mouse over it, it says Font Rendering Method. I can also do a bitmap text. It kind of makes it more blocky, like you tend to see in websites. If I want to do anti-alias for animation, it will render things out a little bit differently when things are animated. There's anti-alias for readability, of course, and a custom anti-alias. You'll probably never use that. I would say cancel for the moment. Typically, you'll just use the default. So once you've clicked off of that, if you no longer use the text tool, say you're doing some other things, and you want to edit this again, you can go ahead and double click on it. That will automatically make it jump to the text tool. Now I can go in here and change some things. I can also do a Command or Control A, which will select all of the text in here. That's, of course, if you have it actually selected initially. Otherwise, it'll select everything on the screen. And then I can go ahead and usually change things to say bold or some other things. Typically, you'll probably keep most of your text at regular, and you'll bold, say, specific words. Bold. The options drop-down is for, say you have a link, you can go ahead and make it a link. Probably you won't generally be doing that for this class. And under filters, say you wanted, well, a glow or a blur. So that's kind of hard to read, right? So typically we're not going to have blur on our text. We can add some other neat things, though. We can add a bevel, which makes it also a little bit harder to read. Essentially, it's adding like a little bit of a shine to the top of it. I would say typically you won't want to add any effects to your text unless they're really huge, because it can make things a bit more difficult to read. You could say add a drop shadow. Again, you can see how, especially with the dark text, the dark shadow is kind of hard to read. If you do accidentally add something, say glow, you can just go up here and click on the glow, and then you can click on the little tiny delete filter. It looks like a little trash can right there. And then that will get rid of it. Of course, you have to have it selected first. So the other thing then is that up here at the very top, and I didn't go over this at first because I wanted to show you some of the other things, we have classic text and TLF text. There's a lot more settings for TLF. I would say you'll want to keep the classic text for now. There's also static text, dynamic text, and input text. Input text would be if someone is going to be typing in their own objects. Input text would be if you had a space you wanted somebody to be able to type in their own things. And dynamic text means that there's going to be some sort of change going on in there. Maybe you'll have it so that it calculates a percentage. Typically, that happens when you're doing like a loading page. You can also do horizontal, vertical, and vertical left to right. In this case, typically it's going to be horizontal, but if you want to do vertical, boom, now it is like that. I mean, the other thing you could do would be use your transform tool and just say, hey, I can transform it, right? But I guess it just is easier to have it in that setting. So the other thing too is if you decide that you want your text to be wider in the box, you can click on one of the little corners right here and you can go ahead and pull it out. You can, of course, as we just saw, transform it the same way that you can transform other things such as images and stuff. This text, by the way, is lorem ipsum, which is typically filler text. It's Latin, and if you are suddenly super curious about it, you can go and Google it. Now, there are some things you can't do to text. For instance, unlike, say, a drawing that I've made with the brush tool, I can't use the eraser tool on it. It doesn't do anything. I'd have to actually transform this text to something else. I'd have to transform it basically to a drawing. Right now, it's editable. If I decide that I wanted to do some sort of neat thing and have like maybe a part of it erased, well, I have to go ahead and right-click and then choose Break Apart. Now it is broken up into all the little tiny letters. So I'm going to zoom in here so you can see. So each letter is now individually editable. That can be kind of neat if you have some effect that you want to use, say with a title. So let's take a look at that for a second. All right, so I have this title here. I right-click, I choose Break Apart. Now I could say, now I could move the letters around, or I could change their colors individually. You actually can do that if you highlight individual colors too. But say I want to edit one of these letters specifically, well, I'd just go in, I'd click on it, right-click again, choose Break Apart. Now you'll notice that it highlights like our images do. And I can go ahead and change it as though it were a drawing, because now it is. The other letters are not yet though, so I would need to go ahead, break apart whichever letters that I wanted to actually change. You can do some pretty neat things by doing this. You can make your own font in a way, if you so desire. One thing that is very important to note, however, is that now that I have changed this, I can't change it back. So I can't make these T's normal again, unfortunately. Maybe in the next version of Flash, but for right now, just bear that in mind. Once you transform them into an image type, you can't transform them back into a text type.